missed you last week, those of you who were here. I was doing something I hadn't done in a long time, and that is give a Lenten mission to another parish. This was our parish, our Friars Parish, in Boynton Beach, Florida, in between Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale. It's a parish called St. Mark's with about 3,000 families. So they have 2 masses on Sunday, 6 masses, 2 masses on Saturday night, 6 masses on Sunday. That's big, huge. And then on Monday morning, I had 8 o'clock mass and then a talk after mass. Had the afternoon free at the beach, if you will. I had to suffer through that. Yes. And then an evening talk at 7:30, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And on Thursday morning, after the morning talk, it was over. And wouldn't you know it, I came down with something, so I couldn't relax on the beach on Thursday. I was sick in bed on Thursday and came back on Friday. But anyway, it's good to be back with you. I do have some good news. Some of you who might know that I used to be a winemaker here in the area, in Elon. And the winery closed about just a little less than 3 years ago, I believe. And many people, I'd done wine tasting classes there and had made some port there. But many people said, there's other wineries in the area, why don't you go see if they would like your services? And I said, I didn't seek out the first winery. If anybody wants my services, they'll come for me. And I got an email this week from Grove Winery in Gibsonville asking if I would be a part of their business and making wine and doing wine tasting. So we're back in the wine business. I'll keep you posted as things go along. Back to serious, okay? Death is a paradox. When's the last time you thought of your mortality? I probably can tell you. It was probably when T, Matt, or I put ashes on your forehead and said to you, remember you are dust, and unto dust you shall return. You may not have wanted to think about your mortality, and maybe as soon as you left the church, or as soon as the ashes were wiped away, you thought of something better, more positive. But the fact is, all of us are mortal. Maybe some of you have experienced the death of someone you love, and again, had to think about your mortality. As a priest, you can probably imagine I've celebrated a lot of baptisms, 26 years of priesthood, a lot of first communions, a lot of first penances, one even tonight before Mass, which is a wonderful thing for a student. I've even got privileged to celebrate a few confirmations, many marriages, even some destination marriages like Bermuda a couple of years ago with 2 Elon alum. That was the best. But I've celebrated over 1,000 funerals. And they're all very sad. But for me, the saddest ones are those that I have to celebrate for family members or friends. And the one that sticks in my heart the most, I had to celebrate the funeral of my cousin, Charlie Gentile. Charlie was 10 years younger than me. And I was told that he died. He was driving back from playing a pickup game of basketball. It was just before Thanksgiving, and he swerved to avoid a deer on a country road and hit another car head-on. The other man survived, and Charlie died instantly. At the funeral, I had to look at the face of his young wife, his 2 young boys, my godfather, my mother's brother, his father, and his wife, my Aunt Joyce, and all of my family members, and all the tears and sadness, and I was equally sad. I went down to the casket, and I said, I wish I could do for Charlie what Jesus did for Lazarus. I wish I could, but I couldn't. I came to the conclusion then that death is a paradox for us who are Christian believers. It is a paradox because it is sadness. We've lost someone we love, but but we know that there's also joy because that person goes on to another life filled with God, filled with love. There is loss of our physical presence with this person, but there's a gain for that person so much more when they're experiencing and anticipating seeing God face to face, so close, so much closer than we. Death is a paradox, something that we have to reflect on often enough in our lives, and we do if we can accept the paschal mystery in our own lives, the dying and the rising. We suffer the dying anytime we deny ourselves and rise in life to Jesus. It's a wonderful paschal mystery that we can have that death and resurrection in our own lives each and every day and understand the mystery of dying and rising. Martha and Mary and the friends of Lazarus didn't understand it so much. Martha and Mary, why weren't you here? Why didn't you come earlier? If you did, he would still be alive. My sisters and brothers, what Jesus did, raising Lazarus to life, wasn't for Lazarus. It was for Jesus. It was for the disciples. It was for Martha and Mary, and it is for us. All of this section of St. John's Gospel, called the sign section, is all about two things: giving God glory, and so that others come to believe. Isn't that right? Giving God glory, and so that others come to believe. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead to show that God had power over death. And that gave God glory. And all the people around, because they saw it, they experienced it, they understood and believed in Jesus as the Messiah, who is the resurrection and the life that he told Martha and Mary. It is so important for us to believe the same. I don't know what kind of man Lazarus was, but if he was a friend of Jesus, I can imagine that he was pretty decent. But I have to ask the question, what type of person was Lazarus after his resurrection? I can venture a thought. I can venture to say that I think he was probably the greatest evangelizer for Jesus Christ that there ever lived, telling all about the power and might of Jesus. I was dead, and now I live. We sing that in Amazing Grace. He actually knew it. Like the first reading, Ezekiel's prophecy, those bones, dead bones, coming to life. Lazarus experienced it firsthand by the power of God. And I'm sure he couldn't keep his mouth shut about it. He told anybody who would listen. My sisters and brothers, we have not been raised from dead to life. But we have seen the power of God in our lives. We have seen some awesome display of God's glory in our lives. We need to be evangelizers just like Lazarus was. We need to be able to speak to others easily about how great God is in our lives, how much God has done for us. Matthew Kelly, in his book, Rediscovering Catholicism, says evangelization is one of the crucial jobs of any Christian, to be able to talk and share the life of Christ. He has 4 points. But first he says, the nature and purpose of the church is to influence people and communities in a positive way. A local faith community should be contagious. Everyone who belongs to that community should be reaching out, both actively, with efforts to evangelize, and passively, with the example of their lives. Those of you in this room who are student execs, or have been in the past, know that I've said to you every chance I have, Facebook, emails aren't enough to evangelize. Evangelization has to be personal. He says, step 1 in evangelization, we must begin to nurture friendships. Friendship was the original model of evangelization. The first Christians did not seek to spread the faith by means of political power, and they didn't have the use of mass media like we do. They simply engaged the oldest and most reliable method of influence: friendship. Reach out in friendship to those that you might want to invite to come to church, even of your own peer group, those who are Catholics that might not. Second step in evangelization is to pray for the people we are trying to reach with life-giving values, principles, and the ideas of the gospel. To pray for these people who, we have 25% of the population of this campus is Catholic. We don't see all those people on a weekend. To pray that somehow they get inspired by the Holy Spirit, or they see us and we invite them to come. Third step to evangelization is to tell your own story. Tell people how God has touched your life. Tell people, anybody who will listen, of how wonderful God is. Just look at creation. Look at nature. Look how wonderful God is to us many moments of the day. Finally, the fourth component of the strategy of evangelization is to invite your friends and neighbors to any of our events. As Catholics, we need to engage the power of the invitation. We need to invite people. And once they are there, we need to make people feel welcome. I'm sure Lazarus, Martha, and Mary, they could easily talk about the power of God, life over death. I'm sure they could talk about their friendship with Jesus Christ. And I'm sure people listened. But it was person to person. Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. He didn't say there is a resurrection and a life. It's personal. Jesus touches our lives in a personal way, giving us the glory that someday we'll see fully